found out that I said, you know, all I could, I would only have summer quarter. So I might as well not start out on summer quarter, start out at fall quarter. So they had a program all these guys kind of came in we were all pretty much within 6 months' time, they came into the squadron and they were all getting out at the same time. And they desperately needed people to keep it going, so they said, we give you a free 30 days leave time if you extend for 5 months. So I extended till August. And so then when I got out, I got a check for 30 days pay because I didn't use the 30 days leave time. And then it was out and about. Time for school.
Time for school. That's something you've never talked about.
Yeah.
You know, I was, well, you know, let's see, in 58, I was 24 years old
Wow.
when I started college. You know, and I got all these 18-year-olds are sitting there with me. I'm saying, you know, what am I doing with all these children? But I was 24 years old when I started school. So, and I remember I really got pissed off at one of the instructors. He had a thing, if you were tardy 3 or 4 times, whatever, he'd dock you 1 grade in an accounting class. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not a friggin' 18-year-old. And your mom and I were married. And I'm living, you know, in our apartment. And in the wintertime, you know, you drove over there, you have to find a parking place. And then, you know, go to get to your class. And so I had 4 of them, and I had an A and I got a B. And I said, son of a bitch, you know. Here I am, 24 years old. I'd spent 4.5 years in the military. And you're gonna play this chicken shit that I can't be tardy more than 4 times. And I don't live in a dorm on a campus. I live off campus and I have to drive here and I have to find a parking place. And I said, that was bullshit.
I agree.
And I majored in Jewish engineering,
What's that?
business management.
Oh.
We called it Jewish engineering. When you majored in business management, that was Jewish engineering. Those of us in that school understood what that meant.
Another politically incorrect term
Another,
being thrown
yeah,
around by a
very.
senior citizen. But it's okay. You should have seen the 91 video. Had to edit a few words out of that one.
And then I went to work for Fram Corporation, the oil filter people. I was back then they called it a field engineer.
Mm-hmm. And what was that mean? What did that mean?
It meant you were a salesman.
Traveling salesman? Over the road?
I had I-40 east and southeastern Ohio. Went to Steubenville and down to Gallipolis. Ate mini meals at the original Gallipolis, what's his name, restaurant.
I didn't know this about you. My territory was in Gallipolis also.
Yeah.
So I know
Bob Evans, when he only had a little dinky
Yeah.
restaurant.
that's where he started.
And there was a motel right next door that was, you know, inexpensive. I'd stay there and I would work 2 or 3 days with, can't say the name off the top of my head, but big parts store, giant parts store. they covered all of West, down into West Virginia and southeastern Ohio there, and I'd go out with their salesmen and try to pitch people into buying Fram filters from this parts store. So that was Fram filter, and that's when I had a Volkswagen Bug. And back in those days, parts stores sold American car parts. You know, this is 60s. They sold American car parts. They didn't sell foreign car parts. So my boss was a neat guy, a Marine, ex-Marine, and he came to me one day. He said, "Jerry," he said, "I think you're going to need to get rid of the Bug because there are some people that are, you know, a little edgy about you driving a foreign car and selling Fram filters." So I ended up getting rid of the Bug and getting a Detroit iron. But when I went to school for Fram, they were in Providence, Rhode Island, and we had to go there for like 3 weeks of training, something like that. But they had a big factory in Greenfield, Ohio, just west of Dayton. So they took the company plane and flew us to Dayton to stay overnight, go through the plant, and then go back to Providence, Rhode Island. So I called your mom and said, "I'm gonna be at the Sheraton Hotel." And so your mom took a bus from Columbus to Dayton, and your mom and I spent the night together. And all the guys, there were like, I don't know, 15, 18 guys. They were all jealous as hell. And I got to spend the one night with my wife, and none of them did. So that was weird.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So
Then from Fram I went to Midville.
in Midville was about the time that a couple kids popped out, came along,
Yeah, and what?
well,
Yeah, I went to
you
work
could
for
tell
them.
us. We were a little young then,
I
so we
went
really
to-
don't remember anything that went on.
I went to work for Midville, and the guy that was the treasurer says, "You're the only employee I can remember what date you started." Because I started 6/6 of 66.
Wow.
So I was the only employee who could remember the date that I started. And then he came along in August. And we lived when you came. Well, I don't know if I ever told that. So, you know, there was Mark and Fran Howard across the street, Don and Nina Hall, and Rail, and Van at the end department. And I forget where Scott and Marty were. They were in that same West 7 somewhere. And so your mom and I had made application for adoption with Catholic Children's Services like a year and a half earlier. And so it was a Monday morning. They got a call and said, "You can pick up your son tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
I think you got a little bit of that story wrong.
What?
You can pick up your child, and you forgot to ask what
Oh,
sex.
okay, yeah.
If it was a boy or a
You
girl.
can pick up your child tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, you know, most people have
That's the
9
story.
months to prepare to get ready. So your mom and I are like, holy shit, what the hell do we do now? You know, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, we gotta be there, and we're gonna bring this kid home. So we put together the neighborhood, Mark and Fran and Rail, and everybody was running around, you know, finding bottles and diapers and washcloths and soap and, you know, clothing, whatever, you know, whatever somebody needed. And when we got back on Tuesday morning, the place was like a Chinese fire drill. You know, there were like 10 couples all running around trying to help your mom and I figure out what the hell we do with this kid. All of a sudden, we're parents out of nowhere. 24 hours notice,
Wow.
and you're a parent. So it was a bit of a zoo.
Were you surprised when you found out it was a boy, or?
Oh yeah, we got down there and oh my God, you know, yeah, the Mark and Fran, what are you gonna call the baby? We don't know. We don't know if it's a boy or a
Baby.
girl. So we don't have a name. So we had to make that up while we were going along. And then a few months later, we moved to Knipp.
Good neighborhood to grow up in.
That was his first house, was on West 7th apartment. And I can't remember what month we bought the house, but we just had mass. And, you know, your mom and I didn't have any idea, you know, that our kid was coming, because nobody had ever told us anything other than 9 months ago, they said, yeah, it looks like you'll be okay. We'll call you when we need you. So we decided, you know, with a kid, we should have a house. So we should go out looking at houses, and we find Knipp. And I forget who this realtor friend was. I can't remember her name now, but she wasn't the brightest star in the universe. So I said, you know, we really don't have a lot of money, but we can buy a house with a VA loan and have nothing down. Okay, well, we'll go VA loan. And I said, then I want the seller to pay any costs that are due to the buyer. She says, well, I've never done that before. And I said, well, you know, if you haven't done it before, you can sit down and I'll dictate and you write. And she's like, yeah, I'll dictate and you write it down. But I haven't done this before. And I said, does that mean it won't work? So she sat down and she wrote it down. She comes back the next day. He says, you got it. He bought it. You've got a house. So then, you know, you go through the normal loan stuff and processing and get down to the closing. And we get to the closing, and the guy is there with his attorney, the seller's there with his attorney. And he says, I didn't agree to paying all of his costs. And his attorney said, here's the contract. It says right here, and he read it. And he says, I'm sorry, but, you know, you have to do it. You signed the contract. So on taxes, there's a calculation I come up with. But anyway, your mom and I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, and a brand new kid, 2 months old, sitting there with somebody watching him, and we got a check for $52 for taxes that we have to pay.
And an unhappy seller?
Huh?
And an unhappy seller?
Unhappy, very unhappy seller, but he paid all of it, you know, we did in those days, you know, the house was only $15,000 at the, you know, so, I don't know, maybe he had to pay $800 or $900, but he didn't think he wanted to pay that, but he signed the contract that said, seller will pay all of buyer's closing costs. And I was glad his attorney was right there to tell him, you know, tough shit, buddy, you signed it. You know, it's the way it goes. So that's how we ended up in Knipp.
How long were you there?
Till I left.
Till you left, that's right.
Duh.
But that was a great neighborhood. You know, that same house was $5,000, $6,000 more in Arlington. And we were in Columbus, and you guys could walk to school on the sidewalk without even having to cross a street. That was really neat.
Yeah.
And a lot of neat neighbors. And Mrs. B,
She was
Mrs.
a
Burns.
treat. She was a treat.
the big B.
Big bopper with her knuckles. And